And now, ladies and gentlemen, Skywalker.
Thank you, Jim Davis, and thanks for tuning in to Radio Memories. It's nice to see you here on February 16th, 2022. We've got such a great show. And of course, Radio Memories sponsored by our good friends, the pros at Audio Girl Productions. Devastatingly effective for all your production needs, whether it be jingles, voiceovers, all multimedia. Does everybody know what that means? They are the best in the business, and please check them out at audiogirlproductions.com. And what a great show we have lined up for you today. World famous Tom Murphy, a true radio legend. He has worked at some of the biggest radio stations in the country with the biggest radio legends. And I am so proud to have him on the show today. And he is going to share his radio memories from his beautiful home in Granada Hills, California, the world famous Tom Murphy. And what a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today, Tom. It is so great to have you on Radio Memories. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, I would point out, you said it was a pleasure. We haven't done anything yet. Why don't you wait a little while and see whether it ends up being a pleasure?
You know, I first got to know you when I was 14 years old at KGIL when you first arrived at that radio station. And you have been nothing but funny and amusing ever since. And when I got to work with you at Clear Channel later in years, oh my goodness, always just the funniest guy in the room. And why don't you start off with telling us where it began?
I was going to do the old Ted Baxter bit.
It all started in a 5,000-watt radio
Station.
You know, carrier current station in the kids' basement in Portland, which is actually the truth. That was where it all began, but that probably won't fly these days. Nobody knows what carrier currents are.
No.
But anyway, it did start in Portland. Just a quick aside. I was back in L.A., and we were doing some function out at Busch Gardens, and Gary Owens came by, and he said, "Phil Boyer." I said, wait a minute. I went to high school with Phil Boyer and started in radio with him. Well, it turned out that Phil Boyer was the program director for the ABC O&Os, and they did the Gong Show, and he put Gary on the Evening Gong Show. And so that was his connection with my old high school buddy, Phil Boyer. Then later on, of course, Chuck Barris, took Gary off of it, and he started doing the Daily Show and the Evening Show. And Gary and I were visiting one time, and he said he wanted to give Chuck Barris a prostate massage with a 357 Magnum, which Phil did better than me, obviously, when he was the O&O program director of all the ABC stations. I did the little carrier current thing, my senior year in high school. Then Phil got a part-time job at a real station. Then he got me in there, and that was in 1958. And I was there until sometime early in '59. And Kissin' Radio had bought a local station, and they were on the air May 1st, and they needed a weekend guy. And I was able to, actually with Phil's help, to put together a really good air check or a demo tape. And so I got the weekend shift. And about 3 weeks into that, they fired a couple of guys, and, well, who will we get to replace this guy? What about Murray? Which is kind of an inside joke. So I got the full-time job, and I ended up there for 5.5 years at Kissin' in Portland, which was a big station there in Portland. They were really, really very successful. Don Burden owned them, and some radio folks will probably recognize that name.
That was like the number one station, right?
Oh, huge. Yeah. We were, I had 40 and 45 shares at night, so we were.
You're like the superstars.
Oh, yeah. 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 Kissin' clicked. Well, the thing about Kissin' was Don Burden had stolen everything from Todd Storrs and Gordon McClendon. So, of course, we had the best of all worlds. And
everybody
the only
was
other
stealing
station in town at that time was KGW, and they were doing top 40. They had some good talent there, including Red Robinson, who's kind of a legend, up in Canada.
Right.
And Kissing was just overwhelming. First of all, we sounded good. We had a really good staff, and it didn't take any time at all for Kissing to
but
be number one, and
when
they
you think
lasted
about
for years.
When you think about numbers like that, everybody is listening in the entire market.
Yeah.
And when you were working with the Real Don Steele, and the two of you were the big stars, what was that like?
Well, it was great. First of all, Kissing was so big that there was hardly anything that ever compared to it, at least in those days. And, of course, I loved Don. He was the PD, and we got along fine. He told me one time, he said, Burton told me when I went in, he said, get along with Tiger Tom and you got it made. So when Don came in, hi, baby. That was about all it took to get along with Tiger Tom. Don was, first of all, Don was, of course, very colorful and goofy and stuff, but he was an extremely smart man, very bright.
Yeah.
He would. I told Sean one time. I told Gracie this before. I said, it's amazing to me.
Now,
we can
Gracie,
go into a room
now Gracie was Don's first wife.
I don't know that they ever married. I think they did, and just kind of a situation was her husband was murdered. He was a bartender at an elk club in Yakima, and some guy came in and robbed him and stabbed him, and he bled to death, which is not to be macabre here. I don't mean that.
Yeah.
But he had Elk's life insurance, and so he got double indemnity, which meant that was untaxable income. And so, they didn't get married. They might as well have been, but there was all that money involved, which didn't kind of sounds cheesy, but it really wasn't when you realized, what was going on.
Yeah.
But anyway, she and my wife got along great. Connie loved her, and I did. Everybody liked Gracie. She was terrific. And Sean too. My God, Sean McNamara. Sean Steele.
Sean.
I always thought, Don got real lucky with wives. He got 2 winners. Don was just so smart, and so he was just kind of like a force of nature. Like you'd be with Don, and everything was, and he was awfully funny. I remember we were in L.A., Connie and me, and visiting with he and Gracie, and we were going somewhere. And I said, what's new? He said, what do you mean, baby? I said, well, how you doing? He said, I got it figured out. He said, what? Every month, 3,000 people are sick of me in L.A. and they move out, but a new 3,000 people move in and they like me. So he figured about every month there was a complete change of 3,000 people who'd worn out and who had never met the real Don Steele, So, and I said, what are you doing? He said, I said, is it that same old shit like, Tumultuous Tuesday and One Terrific Wednesday? He said, yeah, baby, why not? So, Breakfast Friday. But Don had it figured out. There was one pulse, I think, in 62, if I recall, that between 9 and 9:30 at night, I had a 58 share.
I mean, can you imagine that? A 58 share in nowadays? Oh, yeah, my Lord.
No, but I always maintained that the only truly accurate rating service was, of course, Pulse, because I got the 58 on Pulse.
Everywhere you went, you were a star. People recognized you. People knew who you were.
Yeah.
They asked for your autograph. So when you had numbers like that, people had to have been coming up to you all the time.
Well, we were a window operation. So, of course, night after night, the kids would, come by the window and write notes and stuff.
Oh, my God.
And the thing was, as I look back on it, not an altogether bad deal. Local TV guys were really no more recognizable than we were. It's a little easier for them. People had to drive by to see us. All they had to do was turn on their TV for the TV guys.
But I'm talking about radio stations all across the country. Even if you didn't have, that window, that street corner window, radio stations across the country were so popular. I mean, talk about numbers like that. And oh, my goodness. So from Kissin', where do you go from there?
Well, I quit Kissin' after 5.5 years. I just quit, and I had made some money with dances and stuff, so I thought, I've always wanted to go to L.A., so I'm going to go to L.A.
Wait, let me ask you a question. Is that where you were Tiger Tom Murphy?
Yeah, that...
Okay, Lucy, explain.
I'll explain that. Well, we were so involved, especially at night with the kids, with the audiences and those. Well, I mean, they still are today, I suppose, but nobody listens to radio like they did in those days, at least not the Ute. Anyway, a girl wrote me a fan letter, and I kind of wished I still had her name because, and she said, "Hi, Tiger Tom," just out of the blue.
Was it Tina Delgado?
No, I don't know who the hell Tina Delgado was. People ask me about that, and Don did that in Portland, and I never really gave it any thought because to me it just was a drop-in type thing.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, who was it really? I don't know. I don't know whether it was anybody or not.
Yeah.
But at any rate, that was how the Tiger thing said. We were so into the kids, and I said, "Boy, I kind of like that Tiger Tom." And the next night we had 15 letters, "Hey, Tiger Tom," and it just kind of stuck. Now all these years later, I kind of wished it hadn't, but it's a little late. I'm very old, and I still, "Hi, Tiger Tom." Good Lord, that was in 1961. Please. Yeah, well, Larry Lujack had an interesting comment one time. Of course, he and I worked together in Seattle and in Chicago.
Right.
And he said, "I always liked, he was pointing out, he said, like the real Don Steele," he said, that kind of set him apart, and he said, the world famous Tom Murphy, he says, "I kind of like that." And later on, some girl wrote and said, "I think you're a super jock." And so he glommed onto that. So he became super jock, but it was like but other people, Larry Lujack was Larry Lujack. He was just about as good as it got. And he owned Chicago, basically. It was funny when I got there a few years after he got there. Because of him, he talked Lou Witz into bringing me into CFL because Larry was at WCFL at that point. Lou Witz was very, very hesitant at WCFL to go with World Famous.
Is that right?
Larry told him, said, "No," he said, "Oh, trust me, it works." So then all of a sudden, all the buses had, picture world famous Tom Murphy and super jock Larry Lujack. That was the morning and afternoon promotion. I got promotion at WCFL like you wouldn't believe. Good Lord, they knew how to spend the money. And I got to Chicago, and I told him one time we had dinner, of course, right after we got there. I said, "Jesus, I didn't realize how big you were here." He says, "Oh yeah, man." "I'm the king," or some shit like that, I remember. But he was really huge. And why not? He was so different. And, of course, that he who is different can get to be huge unless you're on a 3.5 watt carrier current. And it doesn't matter. Well, the funny thing is I still get email and from people. And now it's just gotten down to world. "Hey, world, what's up?" It's world famous, not just world.
Well, I remember us always calling you World.
Well, I wanted to be called Your Holiness, but nobody would do it, so I went ahead and settled for World,
Yeah, well, I remember at KGIL, when you first arrived, we addressed you as World.
Well, I remember one of the ads. They had myself and Francis Gary Powers and then Tom Brown, the three of us with sketches.
Right.
And it was like world famous Tom Murphy with a little asterisk. And underneath it said, "He really thinks he's world famous, but otherwise he seems okay," which was my idea. I told him to do that, so that was kind of funny, I guess. But
all of you guys, in your own respect, are all so huge. All of you are amazing.
Well, it was a great time.
As you progress and you move on.
Yeah, well, I was at WCFL for like 2 years, and then I had an opportunity to go over to WMAQ, which oddly enough was basically comprised of all of the guys who had been on WCFL, kind of like in round one, with Ken Draper in 67 and 68. So I jumped at that because it was NBC and, a little more money and doing afternoons so I could sleep in, which was my favorite shift anyway.
Now,
and,
MAQ...
Jerry G. Bishop and Joel Sebastian and...
MAQ is a powerhouse, right?
Oh, yeah, it was 50,000 watts clear channel, yeah. What we were doing actually became Hot AC. Jim Stagg was the one that was kind of programming it and putting it together. And we were not Hot AC because R&R hadn't invented Hot AC yet. We had, but R&R hadn't.
Right.
But then they decided to go country, and they let the whole crew go. So that was kind of a sad day for all of us.
Why did they make that decision?
Well, again, there was a research company that became the research group, but at the time they were called Magid. Magid Research, but that was who they were. And they had corralled 4 or 5 people who were out of work from some street corner and put them in. And their idea always was to try to find something that nobody else was doing. And, of course, my opinion of that was there may be a reason why nobody else is doing it. And so they decided that nobody was a combination of country and pop, which, of course, Charlie Warner came in these are names that don't mean anything, but it helps me remember. Came in as the new general manager, and we had a little quick meeting. He says, my God, he said, we're playing music to piss everybody off. I always had a soft spot in my heart for old Charlie for that one. So we kind of got off of that, and Jim Stagg had us really doing pretty well. And then they decided to go country with it. Which made sense in a way. It was a big clear channel down on 67, So,
yeah, but did it make sense?
I do know it wasn't too long after that they ended up going news talk.
Right. Right.
No, well, Lee Sherwood was the PD, and he's been kind of around, in Miami and different places, and J.J. Jeffries had worked with at one time, and they always referred to him as the 8x10 glossy, which I thought was kind of funny.
Well, I not only worked for J.J. Jeffrey. Now,
is this the same one who owned the stations?
Yeah, Bob Fuller.
Okay, so that was the WLS J.J. Jeffrey, right?
Correct.
Oh, okay, yeah. He's a neat guy. I didn't really know him all that well, but
I knew him really well.
Whenever we crossed paths, I liked him,
Yeah, I knew him really well. And I worked for him. I did mornings for him in Sacramento. He did afternoon drive.
Did he own the thing?
Yeah, he and
okay, yeah. He had a partner,
Bob Fuller. Bob Fuller. It was a Fuller Jeffrey group station.
Oh, okay. Small world, J.J. Jeffries. I met. I had occasion when Connie and I and my daughter, who was little then, we left Seattle to come to Chicago to go on WCFL. And it turned out that Dick Saint was already there at LS, and he was having a New Year's party. And so we went to the New Year's party, and, of course, it was all the WLS people. So I met everybody on the staff of WLS before I'd ever met anyone from CFL. So, yeah, he was a good guy. I remember he smoked with a cigarette holder. We all thought that was kind of, to ask him about that.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
It might have been smart. I'm sitting there smoking unfiltered Luckies, and he's got Virginia Slims and a cigarette holder. So you tell me.
How do you get called to L.A.?
Dick Saint. He was the PD at KRLA, and he wanted me to. He and I worked together in Portland at Kissin', and we had stayed friendly. And I'd always wanted to come to L.A., and I had the KHJ disappointment, which I by that time had gotten over after 5.5 years at KJR. Yeah, which was. But anyway, I figured if I was going to get to L.A., I had a shot with Dick, and I'd better take it. So I did. And it didn't work out very well. I had been kind of lucky. I'd had 5.5 years at Kissin' and 5.5 years at KJR. So in 11 years in radio, I'd had 2 jobs, which was rather unusual, I guess. Kissin' and KJR were both... were good stations. Kissin' was a little, crazy as far as the management went, but it was pretty stable as far as I was concerned. And the KJR, they were very stable. And then I got to KRLA, and God, that was a snake pit. Geez. So, but we had a great engineer on the overnighter, Jack Hennessy. I can remember him, and he would direct you. Like you'd be doing a bit and going along, and he'd keep going, say, keep going, and then he'd hold up his hand, oh, that's enough. And he was probably right. Maybe I should have remembered that in later years when it might not have been a bad idea to stop when Jack Hennessy suggested. Yeah, but KRLA was, it was really unpleasant. Then I went back to Seattle, and there were contract problems between KJR and me, and I had an offer to go to KOL, so I went to that. Plus, I realized that KOL was owned by Buckley, who owned KGIL. So, of course, in the back of my mind was at some point, maybe I can transfer back to L.A. and get on KGIL, which I did. But I had to have 3 years in Chicago and a year in Cleveland before that worked out. Do you know who Craig Hines is? You remember him?
Oh, yeah, I remember Craig, yeah.
Craig Hines was the one who recommended to KGIL that they bring me out to do mornings. And I don't really quite understand that because I barely knew Craig. He was a listener of mine at KRLA and wrote me a nice letter and was in radio in Nernman, California or something. But anyway, he was the one that kind of started that ball rolling. But the KGIL people knew me from KOL because it was the sister station. But I was at KGL about almost a year, and they wanted to bring Dick Whittington back, which certainly made sense. And I liked him. He was really fun to be around. And they moved me into the middays, and they wanted to bring Larry Van Nuys back, which also made sense, although I'm not quite sure that the return of either one of them made that much difference. I think they pretty much stayed about the same, which was fine. They were making money, and they had people that they liked. But I was able to land on KISS, and I did some weekends on KISS AM, and then Rochelle Staub wanted me. Well, they finally separated. They were totally separated except in the morning from the simulcast. Their morning show was still...
was it Charlie Tuna?
No, Tuna was gone by then. There was Bruce Philip Miller who was doing the mornings on KISS FM, and they were simulcasting it through the AM. Then they finally wanted to separate it, so Jerry Bishop went out of afternoons and into mornings, and I think Larry McKay went into the afternoons on the AM, and then I went on the FM and did the morning show there, and then that was great until disco. John Bayless, Kent Burkhart conned John Bayless into going disco with KISS, which was a disaster.
That's when KISS FM went completely all disco.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And they completely lost their audience.
Everything, there just was a disaster. Then they brought in Don Benson. And Don Benson I liked a lot. He was a real smart guy, and he took them off disco and kind of got them back online. But he wanted me to come back on the FM. He was kind of talking about maybe me doing afternoons. And but they had Mike Wagner, who was good. No reason to take him out of there. I just ended up staying on the AM, which, I don't know, probably wasn't the greatest move I ever made, but the money was good, so what the hell.
It was an after station.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Well, which was good because my son was born with heart defects, and we had after insurance, and which was great at that time. So, boy, that was why I stayed through religion and through all kinds of, headwinds.
The AM had changed through so many different formats.
Oh, I know it, yeah. Well, they were kind of sort of a half-baked, semi-hot AC, I guess, at one point there. And, of course, by that time, KISS FM was just pounding the hits. We were on the Bartell format, which was every 90 minutes you turn the music. Rochelle Staub was a Bartellonian, and what I did do was great for L.A. because your audience changes so quick. It's not so good when you're rotating the music that tight in a small town in the Midwest. They're playing the same shit over and over. But in L.A., they didn't know. They didn't know that we'd played, You Light Up My Life a half hour ago.
Right. Yeah.
God, Rochelle loved You Light Up My Life. We had to play that every half hour when it first came out. And I liked it all right for about the fourth or fifth time. Then all of a sudden it was starting to give me worms, so I didn't...
Oh, God, that song just drove me crazy after a while.
Oh, it drove everybody crazy. I think Debbie Boone probably wishes to hell she hadn't recorded it either, Isn't it funny how something like that will be so big and then it just turns to shit?
Another one of those crazy songs back then is Having My Baby.
I must tell you a Larry Lujack bit. Of course, Larry and I go way back to KJR in the 60s. But anyway, he had Paul Anka on his show. Says, Paul, you know why your song was so big and so popular? Well, why, Larry? Poor Paul didn't know he was going to get eaten alive. He said, because it's short. It's only 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and we need that song to get into the news on time. He did a bit that a friend of mine that I worked with at CFL heard him do. and they had fired Art Roberts. So you know the name Art Roberts, of course. You know. And he'd been doing middays at WLS, and for some reason they got rid of him. It's kind of dumb why because he probably went back there 2 or 3 more times, over the years. But anyway, Larry's talking about it. He said, "Wow," he said, "boy, they let Art Roberts is gone. Just boom, he's just not here. They let him go." I said, "That's kind of too bad." He said, "Although actually, the upside of it is now that Art's gone, I move up on the vacation list."
There's always an upswing.
God, Larry could really, he was the best.
Yeah.
I guess he was having a big dispute with Paul Abrams, who I guess was kind of a piece of work, and Mike McCormick too. And Larry had done something, and he said, "Whoa!" He was looking out the window, and of course, in the entryway you could see from the studio. Larry says, "Wow," he said, "Paul Abrams, I think, wants to talk to me about something I just did." He said, "But the rule is, as long as the on-the-air light is on, he can't come in." So he said, "I'm just going to keep the on-the-air light on." I don't know how many people realized what an on-the-air light was, but it was enough, So apparently Paul finally threw in the towel, and went back to the office, and I'll get to him later, But,
That's a great story.
Isn't that a wonderful story? Yeah.
That's a great story.
He just left the damn light on, I don't know whether he was still talking. Probably knowing Larry, God knows he could have, talked that long.
That's hilarious.
As long as the on-the-air light was on, Paul couldn't come in and fuck with him.
Right. And that used to be, that was the rule. When the on-air light was, you couldn't. Yeah. You didn't go into the studio, so.
You didn't. It didn't matter who it was. If they were on the outside and not on the air light was on, they were going to stay on the outside. Yeah. Knowing and working with Larry both times that I did was just great. He was just fun. We used to do I did 9 to midnight. He did 6 to 9 on JR, and then we used to do Homework Hall of Fame, which was some Pat O'Day, wet dream that he dreamed up, although it actually worked pretty good. So I'd take down the questions, and then I'd go on the air and give the questions to Larry, and then he'd get on the phone and get the answers. And it was really pretty clever. And at the time, we always got some really good stuff because it was kind of before AOR. And so all of the kids at University of Washington were listening to KJR. So we'd get a lot of the we did have one little incident that I caught on to. Actually, Larry did shortly thereafter, but somebody wanted the formula for lysergic acid diethylamide, which of course was LSD. So I was telling that to the LA radio group here one time, and they all got kind of a kick out of that story. I said "You knew damn well that some chem major out at the University of Washington was mixing that crap up in the bathtub, bathtub LSD.
Don't you miss that about radio today? I mean,
I don't listen. I'm not trying to be a weenie here, but
no.
In the morning I just don't listen to morning radio.
But you're simply not alone. Nobody is listening to radio. Terrestrial radio is, and just, all you have to do is look at the numbers. The numbers are embarrassing.
Yeah. I don't even know if they're doing it in the car anymore, because you can get stuff off the satellite in the car too, so.
Well, not only satellite, but you can get any kind of digital media. But there are no.
Yeah, the podcasts are really, I'm too damn lazy to bother with one, but.
And Tom, when is it that you hung up your headphones?
This morning. Funny. The only person that called was you, and you were going to offer me a gig, so I said the hell with it. I guess probably the last, sort of a faux radio I did was for Real Oldies in Chicago, and I think that was like, if I recall, like 2012 or something. I think it was really very good, because Tommy Edwards really had the format down pretty well, and they had a real sharp guy doing the music, and I would go to Burbank, and they had so many studios there in the complex that they just kind of made me a little studio of my own and set all my, compression, settings and everything.
Right.
But it was, it really sounded good.
And how long did you do that?
couple of years, as I recall. And they paid pretty well, big money, but it wasn't big effort either, So, but John Guerin, it was kind of sad in a way because they made Real Oldies. It was one of those extended AM things. Remember when the FCC kind of lengthened the AM dial,
Mm-hmm.
and so the first hour of Tommy and Larry was being drowned out by a more powerful extended place in Atlanta. And then our signal, we were big with the South Chicago, which was kind of WVON territory, and so it was really. There was a book that came out about us, and one of the guys said, "Never has so much been done by so few for so little." It was like, meaning Larry and me and Scotty Brink and and some of the rest of them. Yeah. Tommy and Larry were funny in the morning. I used to listen to them because, of course, you can get them online too. Yeah. We had much more. We had more audience like in South Korea and in Holland and places like that. Where I used to have a fan club in the Netherlands or some shit.
Yeah,
never had that on KJR.
But it was a fun station, and it was easy to do because you got to voice track it. All you had to do was drive to Burbank.
Yeah, well, they had the profit system, which was something that Clear Channel had dreamed up. I never quite. I may have been on the profit system, but I wasn't making a big profit.
Well, none of us were. I was voice tracking in the studio next to you at the time. And
yeah, well, and we all appreciated your efforts. I have no idea why, but we do. It comes up sometimes at dinners there at Morton's. You can piss away a couple of $100 real quick there, can't you?
Oh yeah.
Good Lord, yeah.
But we had some funny conversations as we were voice tracking our respective radio stations. But I know you were having a fun time in Chicago voice tracking there.
Oh yeah, well, what was funny was I'd see the weather or something, because I only did a couple of days ahead, so I could really be pretty topical. I didn't do like a whole week, on Monday or something. Right. Mostly because I wasn't busy, and I wanted it to kind of sound good, and I enjoyed seeing the folks there and stuff. But it was always funny, another 4 inches of snow fell last night in Skokie, which was anti-Semitic because that was where all the Jewish people were. So somehow they ended up with 4 feet of snow, and the assholes in the loop, got an inch, But it was always funny because I'd come in there and it'd be 80 degrees here, and I'd be talking about a big blizzard hitting Chicago. But we loved Chicago. We'd have stayed there. I've often said I'd have stayed at MAQ until hell froze over if I could have, because it was the only way they'll get me out of here is in a pine box, or if Jack Thayer comes in and changes it to country. Those were the two options.
You've had such a wonderful career, and it's just it's been such a pleasure knowing you, and I've known you for such a long time. And I appreciate you being on Radio Memories. Thank you for your time.
Was that it? We run out of tape?
The real
you couldn't get an hour reel? What's wrong with you?
The reel to reel is coming to an end.
Well, anyway, it was great fun. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to my stories, mostly because I kind of wing them, but I hope that, there were a few laughs along the way here.
Always one of my favorite disc jockeys. And I thought you were wonderful when you came to KGIL, and it's always been a pleasure. I love your stories. You're very, very demonstrative, very animated, and very amusing. And Tom, I hope you're enjoying your retirement.
Well, yeah, I don't do much. This will be the highlight of February, and I'm only 2 days in.
And I hope you're enjoying your life. And
well, thank you. That's nice. I've been. There have been some times that weren't a lot of laughs, but overall, I had a pretty good run, all things considered. I started in '59, and I lasted into the 2000s, so that's not too bad, is it?
And damn good. The world famous Tom Murphy. Tom, take care of yourself.
And yes, that's my prime job now, nothing else. Oh, I occasionally go off the deep end and order in a batch of Kentucky Fried, but what the hell,
As always, leave them laughing. Thank you, world famous Tom Murphy, for your time. And coming up on the next Radio Memories, another radio legend. We've got Damien coming up on March 2nd, 2022. LA radio rock legend Damien is going to be joining us, and he's going to be sharing his radio memories.
Check out past interviews on the Radio Memories YouTube channel and on Spotify. Click the links. This is Maggie McKay for Radio Memories, a Dave Schuyler production.
Radio Memories.